für de lange Weg. 2 Flaschen Whisky für die Zeit. Und ich date gern habe, du bist dabei. Maria geht, fahrt mal weg, ist weit. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch seh. Hab kriegt mein Zettel für den langen Weg. Du schönste, als mir finden kann. Es hat Maria und Dale ganz wunderbar. Hass ich dir den weißen Dank. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch seh.
Well, gute Abend, liebe Leid, good evening, dear people. It is the 22nd of Jänner, the 22. Jänner, and we are back at it for the first episode of PA Dutch Live for the year 2025. We are now entering our 4th year of this show. I can't believe it. We started back in 2021. So yeah, this is our 4th year, and I'm really excited to bring you hopefully what'll be another whole year of episodes, one a month, of course, trying to bring you the best Pennsylvania Dutch themed show on the internet. I don't know how much competition I have, but I think it's the best no matter who my competition, and hopefully you feel the same way. A lot of you must, because you keep coming back month after month. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, as we say in Pennsylvania Dutch, welcome to the show. And if this is your 35th time joining us, welcome as well. No matter whether you're joining us on Facebook, over on PA Dutch 101's Facebook page, or if you're on the YouTube channel, throw in the comment section where you're joining us from. I like to give some shout outs, and there are people that are already flooding the list with, holy cow, hey, Titus Keller, Michigan Keller is originally from Buffalo Springs, Lepton County. Welcome to the show. Chase B. Gouda Obit from California. Chase, I hope you're not anywhere near all that fire stuff that's going on down there. I hope you're safe, but thanks for joining us. Don Moyer, wie bist du, Bruder? Ich wohne in Midlothian, Virginia. Well, I'm doing all right. Ich bin all right, Bruder. Good to see you. Chad Hefner from Glenmore, Pennsylvania, but originally from Fleetwood, is joining us. Good to have you, Chad. Thanks for joining us tonight. Donna Damac. Hey, Little Mount Airy near Ephrata. I know Mount Airy, and I know Ephrata really well. Glad to have you with us tonight, Dana, however you pronounce your last name. Bachfeuer, Ed Cohn from Delaware is joining us. Good to have you, Ed. You join us almost every month. Derek Keller, hello from Windcap, Northampton County. Great to have you as well. Oh, there are good friends. The Wispatzers are here from Fleetwood or the greater Fleetwood area. Good to have you. Dolly joins us every month as well from beautiful Berks County in the big city of Fleetwood, Pennsylvania. Staying up after midnight over across the ocean. Hello from Steinbach am Glan. Freezing but wide awake. Norman, our good friend Norman. Now listen, I don't know how cold it was in Germany this morning, but at my house here in the mountains of north central Pennsylvania, I had -2 degrees Fahrenheit. And some of you out there might have had something colder, but that's what I had at my house. What that is in Celsius, I'm not quite sure, but it's pretty darn cold. That's all I have to say. But thanks for staying up, Norman, and stay warm. Our good friend and my distant cousin, Carol. Good evening from chilly downtown Burnville. Carol, it's not chilly here. It's cold. Our good friend Brigitte joins us almost every month as well. Hello from Chile. Everybody's chilly. People, let's be honest. You're sugarcoating it. It's downright cold out there. From Philadelphia. Randy Howard, a hello from Texas. Lenora Holt, she joins us every month from Lakeland, Florida. I bet it's not as cold in Florida as it is here in Pennsylvania. Kelf, hello from Berks County, Lancaster County line. Are you right on the line tonight? Which way are you? One leg in one county, one leg in the other, right? BW Marine, an American Legion friend. We were just reminiscing about our trips to PA Dutch areas when we lived nearby. He lived closer with one R and he misses it now. As a teen, I love to make the trips. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed spending time in Pennsylvania Dutch country. It is beautiful, isn't it? Christopher, our good friend Christopher Malone. Hello from Muhlenberg land in Trap, PA, our good friend. Glad to have you with us, joining us, Christopher. Donna Gerber, hello from Skippack. I know where that is, but originally from Pine Grove, Schuylkill County. Boy, we got lots of people joining us tonight. That's great. Oh, BW says 34 degrees in Jacksonville, Florida. Honey, that's pretty darn warm. that'd be a heat wave for us here the last couple of days in Pennsylvania. John Shaw says hello from Tennessee. Erica, our good friend Erica. Hey, Doug, looking forward to this month's episode. Our house was built by Swiss immigrants in Milford Township, Bucks County, and I'm excited to hear more about them. Yes, you played my hand early there, Erica. We will be talking about all things Swiss tonight. But as is always the case, I like to thanks for giving us all the shout outs, letting us know where you're all joining us from. It's always great to see who's joining us and lots of friends that join us every month. It's always good to see you guys. But we got some stuff to let you know about. Waiting in the green room, just itching to get in here and tell us about all things Swiss, is Joseph Smith. He's going to be talking about the Swiss settlers of Pennsylvania, a little bit about that history. And then, of course, we'll have a poem coming at you and a song tonight. But first, some things for your calendar and this bit of news. This month's episode is brought to us by the fine people. Now, this might be controversial, but we'll talk about it. The fine people who will be hosting the first annual Eastern PA Homestead Festival at the Kutztown Fairgrounds in July of this year. Now, I know some of you out there are like, you probably have a little bit of sour taste in your mouth because, as we all know, and as we've talked about here on the channel, the Kutztown Folk Festival, our beloved festival, is no longer. I guess that's the easiest way of saying it. I don't know what has all happened since. I do know that this group announced this new festival, and they are saying that it will be paying homage to the Kutztown Folk Festival. It's going to take place between the 3rd and the 6th. I have an email out to them to try and get the person that is the head of this organization to come on the show and tell us about the festival. We're emailing back and forth, and hopefully we can make that happen sometime later this spring. And of course, I'll keep you guys all updated. But you can visit their website to learn more. They already have tickets for sale July 3rd through the 6th on the fairgrounds there where the folk festival was. Who all is going to be involved? How many of the the old timers from the Kutztown Folk Festival will be invited? That I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But you can at least check out their website. But the address, I should have typed that out. Just search Eastern PA Homestead Festival, and it'll take you to their website. Now, people, if you've always wanted to learn Pennsylvania Dutch and you just can't because you don't know how to go about doing that, I've been talking to you about this for years now. But once again, the good people at the Berks History Center will be beginning their spring semester of courses to learn Pennsylvania Dutch, both in person, there in Reading, but also for anyone, no matter where you are in the world, via Zoom. Their new classes start later in the month of February, so you can still sign up. I know they're still accepting people in all 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. These are taught by great people. I've talked to people that have taken both in person and online. Good stuff. So if you have always wanted to learn Pennsylvania Dutch, or if your New Year's resolution is to learn Pennsylvania Dutch, then this is your opportunity. So mark your calendars, check out the Berks History Center's website or Facebook page for more information. 2 great upcoming events to involve your children or grandchildren in learning more about Pennsylvania Dutch folklore, and that is, we're going to start with the Schwenkfelders there in Montgomery County. They're, I don't know what number annual this is, but this has been going on for a while now. Their annual Groundhog Lodge for the kids, Grundsaallodge for Junge, will be taking place on Sunday, January 26th from 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. And that is there at the Schwenkfelder Heritage Center in Penn. I always get this wrong. Check out their website. But our good friend Scott Reagan, who we've featured on here before, will be performing music. It's going to be lots of fun for all ages, but geared towards kids to learn about Pennsylvania Dutch culture, maybe their culture if they are Pennsylvania Dutch. And they'll be talking about all things groundhog, of course. So check out their website, has information about the event, their Facebook page. You can also email Meredith at theschwenkfelder.org, and their website is also there as well. A couple people joining us. I want to give them quick shout outs. John Kim says hello. Kay Price Bittner joining us from Watsontown, Pennsylvania. Chase B saying, I signed up for the Berks County Deutsch class starting next month. That's great. Congratulations, Chase. I know you're going to have a great time. Our good friend Richard Mamana is joining us from Germantown, checking in. Another event for kids, Pennsylvania Dutch organized, is the 6th annual Grundsaallodge for Junge. This is a similar event, but hosted by a different group of people. This is by the same people that host the Pennsylvania Dutch or Pennsylvania German Sommerlauf. This year's Groundhog Lodge for Kids will take place on Saturday, February 1st. It's going to be held at the Zion United Methodist Church of Christ, or I think that's what that would be, UMC, Church of Iona, and that is in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, from 1:30 to 3 p.m. These are great events. You might, if you got grandkids or kids, these are the kind of opportunities you can take them to learn about our culture and our history in a fun environment, in an environment that is welcoming and educational. And I mean, these people do great work. I've been at both of these events in the past, both the one at the Schwenkfelder and the one here in Lebanon. These are high quality events run by people that truly are dedicated to what they're doing. So if you have kids or grandkids and you're not doing anything either of those days and you think they would enjoy this stuff, take them, take them, take them, take them. Please. Scott Kinsey Reagan joins us from Nazareth. I just mentioned you, Scott, because you're going to be playing at the Groundhog Lodge for kids there at the Schwenkfelders. Doug Dockey's joining us from Graz. Boy, we got people coming in here all the time. Ken Smith joining us. Hey, Doug. Hey, Ken. Good to see you, my friend. A couple other things for your calendars. So, and I apologize that the writing's so small. Did you know that there's a Groundhog Lodge that takes place in Brooklyn, New York every year? This has been started, what year is this? It's their 11th annual, and they do it via Zoom. If anyone's interested in learning more about this, I know the guy that runs this. He's a really nice guy. And the story goes, he and his wife were originally from Pennsylvania Dutch country. They moved to Brooklyn for work and they missed this aspect of the culture. So they brought it to Brooklyn, and they have some people actually come and are in person. And then they also host it via Zoom. So that is also on Saturday, February 1st at 4:30 p.m. via Google Meet, not Zoom, but I mean, the same kind of thing. If anyone's interested in learning more, email me info@padutch101.com. And then I can send you the link if anybody wants to join. It's a fun time. They sing some Pennsylvania Dutch songs. They do some Pennsylvania Dutch poetry, and they, celebrate Groundhog Day, which of course is coming up very, very quickly. Another shout out to the Berks History Center. They're going to do their annual Loompa party. Now, what's a Loompa? A Loompa is rag, and they're going to do a rag rug workshop where you can learn how to make the old style rag rugs that the Pennsylvania Dutch are famous for making, of course, back in the day. That takes place on the 15th of February. You can go to their website to learn more about that cool event. Every month, I do a hee-haw style salute to some town in the greater Pennsylvania Dutch country. And this month's shout out goes to Slatington in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, founded in 1864 with a current population, according to the newest numbers I could see, of 4,232. So in the honor of hee-haw and all those Pennsylvania Dutchies up there in Slatington, salute to all you fine people up there in Slatington. Next month, we'll have a new little town. All right, enough waiting. It is time to bring on our guest for the month. We welcome this month Joseph Smith. No, not the guy that led the Mormons, but a different Joseph Smith. And he will be talking to us about the Swiss settlers of Pennsylvania. So let me bring him into the show. Joseph, it is good to see you, my friend.
Doug, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So I like to start every episode the same way so that everybody kind of gets an idea of what's going on. Tell us a little bit about Joseph Smith. Are you Pennsylvania Dutch? Do you have Pennsylvania Dutch connections?
I do. The direct Smith line is actually Schmidt. We settled way out in Chestnut Hill, out in Northampton County. I think it's in Monroe County now, but way out in the Lehigh Valley. And we got here in 1739, and they were from Offenbach and Hundheim down on the Rhine, and the immigrant couple was Johann Jakob Schmidt and his wife Magdalena Wiesnet, and their son was Captain Abraham Schmidt, and he served in the French and Indian War and the American Revolution as well. He also sat on the Northampton County Committee of Observation. So that's my Pennsylvania German pedigree, as it were. And the last person born and the Heimat, as I might call it, was my grandfather. And then the family moved to New York during the Depression.
Okay. So we often talk about, when we're talking about Pennsylvania Dutch, I think most people tend to generally think about the people that came from the Palatinate region. We've talked a lot about that region here on the show before. This area, what's known in German as the Pfalz, there along the Rhine River Valley. But there are many of us, me included, who are descendants of people that didn't directly come from that area of Germany, and they came from Switzerland.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit before you sent me some images, which I'll share, of course, but what can you tell us, like background history about why were there Swiss people coming with these German people?
Well, they spoke German and they adhered mostly to the Reformed faith. They were not Lutherans, and that's an important point to mention. because they often get lumped together, as it were. And the Swiss rather, had ended up in the Rhineland and the Palatine in the wake of the devastation of the 30 Years' War, and they also ended up in Alsace and Lorraine. These areas were totally depopulated, and Switzerland was terribly overcrowded at the time, and the local nobility, they were looking for basically German-speaking Protestant settlers to rehabilitate the land, and they offered them terrific incentives, exemptions for, say, 30, 40 years from taxes, from military service for the young men. They gave them startup equipment for farms. They basically were looking for people to come in and do their dirty work, as it were, and get the land back to being agrable, and to do something with it, because the area was it was a terrible scene during the 30 Years' War.
Well, to help people
most of
kind of
us realize
understand
nowadays how awful the 30 Years' War really was.
No, we don't. There's a lot of Americans that have no idea what the 30 Years' War even was. And I'll have to get a historian on sometime to really talk about that. But because most of us are descendants of people that survived that, of course, or were affected by it in some way or another, because it affected so much of Europe. But let's talk just a little bit about Switzerland now. I think that for most Americans, if they think of Switzerland, they're probably thinking of the Alps and maybe alpine horns and yodeling and fondue, maybe, and then chocolate watches. I don't know. But from the Pennsylvania Dutch perspective, of course, as I said, many of us do descend from people from Switzerland. And just to give people a little bit of a geographic and historical aspect of what Switzerland is like, you threw two maps at me to show. So let's talk about this one first.
Sure. The overwhelming majority of the Swiss who arrived in Pennsylvania before the Revolution spoke German. There was a very small group of highly skilled artisans that arrived from the French-speaking areas, mostly today in the city of Geneva, and the area in the province of Vaud, which was part of Bern at the time. But the great majority were farming folk who they were either Reformed and they arrived from Bern, or they were Anabaptist or Mennonite, and they arrived from Zurich. It's basically the two great tracks, as it were, of Swiss migration to colonial Pennsylvania.
And for those of us that aren't necessarily strong on European geography, when we're looking at this map, the regions that Joseph's talking about are in northern Switzerland. If you know your geography, the part of northern Germany there, the part of northern Switzerland that we're looking at borders southern Germany, and France is off to the left, upper left a little bit there, right? So I mean, it was literally going right across the border, and the Rhine River starts in Switzerland and flows north, so it was quite easy for these people to get on boats, for example, from Switzerland and float up the Rhine into
Rotterdam.
Germany. Yeah, all the way to Rotterdam. That's right. You also, and today, Switzerland is a multilingual country. This map is great because it shows, the green regions are regions where predominantly German is spoken in Switzerland, but then there's the French region where the yellow is, there's the Italian region, it's the pink, and then there's the Romansh, which is this really unique language spoken in Switzerland by a small percentage of the population. But I will say this, if anyone's ever thought about going to Switzerland and they thought the language was going to hold them back, the Swiss are also multilingual on other fronts too, because almost all Swiss speak really great English as well. So as an American, really great English. As an American, don't hesitate to go to Switzerland. Don't let the language barrier hold you back, I guess I should say.
My German will never be half as good as their English, and I'll leave it at that.
That's right. You talked a little bit briefly about this religious makeup of the Swiss that came, and you included this map too that shows the different kinds of Christian groups in Switzerland. You know, maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. If you want to understand Switzerland, you have to understand language and religion, and I think that's the two best. That's why I included these two maps. That's the best way to really try to get your arms around these 26 very diverse cantons. We're a small country. There's a lot of diversity going on. The deep blue areas, especially say Bern and Zurich, that's where the Reformed faith was the strongest, and that's where the great bulk of the Pennsylvania Swiss originated from. My personal ancestry is from Bern and Aargau. Aargau is a mixed canton, technically. It's about half Catholic, half Protestant. Aargau was part of Bern until 1803, so as was Vaud. So I always keep that in the back of my mind, that this was part of, like, Greater Bern, as it were. But they were Reformed as well. So all my Swiss ancestry is German-speaking and Reformed. Now, also, the Mennonites and the Amish and the Anabaptists, the great majority of them came from Zurich, and they were also German-speaking. Bern, I think, is the only canton today that still has a significant Reformed majority. The rest of the cantons, they're either Catholic from people who've emigrated from different countries, particularly Italy and France, or they're just not religious, as it were, as the Reformed Church has taken a bit of a drubbing in recent decades, unfortunately. But if you want to understand Switzerland, you have to understand language and religion. And I have only encountered, I've been doing Swiss American genealogy during the colonial era on a pretty steady basis for about 5 years now. I have encountered one Swiss Roman Catholic family that arrived in Pennsylvania during the colonial era, the Egg or Eck family. They're from the canton of Solothurn, and they were gun makers. They were very good gunsmiths. It's the only one I've encountered. I have not encountered a single Swiss Jewish family to arrive in Pennsylvania during the colonial era.
And I know that a lot of people watching the show probably know this, but there might be people not or watching that don't know this. Just to remind everybody, when Joseph talks about the Anabaptist groups like the Mennonite and the Amish, they all had their origins in Switzerland during the Reformation. If you know your Reformation history, of course, Luther's doing his thing in Germany. Jan Hus before that, and then Luther starts doing things, and then we have John Calvin in Geneva, in Switzerland, and we have this movement, his movement, the Calvinist movement, and the Anabaptist groups, the first Mennonites, would break off from these Protestant groups because they felt they hadn't taken the Reformation far enough, or they weren't, their interpretation of the faith was different from what these other groups were saying, and in many times, a lot of these Anabaptist groups were highly persecuted in Switzerland by the Swiss because they were seen as the weirdos. They were the extremists, the radicals, and they were pushed out in a lot of cases or fled and left Switzerland and came into Germany, and they were there for a little bit, generation or two, depending, and it all depended who was in power and what the power wanted and what they were talking about, for their people. And eventually all those Mennonite and those Amish that made their way to America, they all have their roots in Switzerland. We have to remember that. And we can talk linguistically why, there's Swiss influence in Pennsylvania Dutch too, among the Amish and the Mennonite, coming from this shared history that they have. Yeah.
It's a living language. It's a living language of rural Bern and Zurich, basically in the 1600s, almost like Quebecois is. It's a truly remarkable dynamic that this has managed to survive all these centuries.
Yeah, absolutely. So you sent us some photos also, or scanned images of some old documents. I think let's turn to some of these. And the show's yours. Say whatever you want to tell us, Joseph.
Sure. So I was researching the Koch family from Obersteinmoor in the canton of Zurich, and it was a member of our society. And you could only access the canton of Zurich records at a family search affiliate library, a family history center. I live in Yonkers, New York. The main library here is an affiliate library, so I had these terrific references, and I was able to go in. And these are basically digitized microfilms. It's the only way I can describe them. And I was able to go in and track down all these references of the Koch family from Obersteinmoor. Hans Kasper is he's the father of the family, and his wife, and I think his 5 or 6 kids, they all came over together to Philadelphia about 1740-ish, which was the high watermark of Swiss immigration to Philadelphia. And I found his record. I was very happy, and this lovely woman, she had all these dates that I was able to actually find all these records for. And for me, it was just, a 15-minute walk, and I downloaded all of them, I saved them, I emailed them to her, and I think I gave the poor dear old gold, and I was so happy I could do it. But it's also a testament to family search and Swiss bureaucracy. I've always said from about 1600 onwards, unless there was a flood or a fire, there's no reason why you can't find a Swiss record.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You talk about the Germans being good at paperwork and good record keepers. No, the Swiss, they are top of the tree.
So for someone that's never gotten into genealogical records, just to let people know, when you see something like this and you're doing what are you
I
reading
smile.
in a book? Well, yeah, okay, you smile first, and then so you find this Hans Caspar Koch's baptism record.
Mhm.
What has all been documented? Of course, his name.
Mhm.
But when you're looking at these kind of records, what else is there? What do you get from
Sure.
these records?
The date of baptism, the place of baptism, dad's name, mother's maiden name, ideally included. It usually would be by about 1700. The godparents, usually either neighbors or close relatives of either mother or father. And you can sort of, sometimes, depending on the pastor, you can almost construct a small family tree out of a baptism record. You might have a notation of the godmother, uh, a sister of the mother, or cousin of the mother. The godfather might be uncle of the father, uncle of the mother, or something like that, that you might be able to even find another maiden name and push the family tree back another generation. And in Zurich, we're lucky. There is a searchable marriage index. You can search by parish or by the bride's maiden name or the groom's maiden name, and you can try to work out, as it were, where they might have been married. And sometimes in a marriage record, you might have the bride's mother's maiden name or the groom's mother's maiden name included, and you can go back another generation still. So it's always very interesting. It depends on the pastor a lot, but
Yeah.
to those who are more conscientious, it's a little pull into the family at the time of the infant's baptism, like who was where and related to who and whatnot.
Right. And we're going to stay with the Koch family because you also send us an Abzug record. So explain what the heck this is.
The Abzug was a tax. It usually hovered around 10% of total taxable goods. And in order to leave the canton legally, you needed to pay the Abzug. You appeared before. Now, all these cantons were broken down into Amt, which are like little areas within a canton, maybe say 5, 6, 7 towns. You appeared before the Obervogt, and you would basically, they would do an inventory, like, how much is this guy actually worth? And the idea was that if things did not work out overseas or further abroad, that you would come home and they would hold a tenth of your goods, basically as security, and that you could live off of that till you got back on your feet. Now, a lot of people realized that because of the dire poverty that existed, especially in rural Switzerland in the 1700s, they said, to help with that, essentially, and they literally fled in the middle of the night. That's why trying to find an Abzug record is very difficult. But as I said, this lovely old woman had a reference from Albert Bernhard Faust, which we'll get to in a little bit, I know, that the Koch family had paid the Abzug, and that they had lived in Obersteinmoor, and this was a set of ledgers kept separate from the parish register. But if you have a reasonably decent date as to when they left, you can send a nice email to the archives, because these records have not been digitized. And if you give them enough of details, you get the right person on the desk, as it were, that they will try to take a look and find the Abzug record. It's essentially an immigration tax. It's an exit tax. It's 10%, and they'll try to track it down for you.
It's interesting. I wonder if so we know this was happening in Switzerland. So I'm curious to know. I have relatives that came from Switzerland, but in the early 1700s as well, to Pennsylvania, and I'd love to know if they paid that tax or if they just left. I'd be curious to know that. Right.
The best reference is Albert Bernhard Faust's lists of Swiss immigrants to colonial America, and if you're in there, you pay the Abzug, because he went through those lists to generate his book, and the book came out in the 20s. I call it the Bible. Ironically enough, my chief Swiss ancestor, the guy who got me rolling on this ball, as it were, he paid the Abzug, but he didn't get a mention in Faust. And I attribute this to the fact that he moved out of his hometown. His parents died when he was fairly young. He was taken in by an aunt and uncle, and he left one town in Bern, Amsoldingen, and he went to another town, Seisiemen, also in Amsoldingen, but it was in a different amt. So I don't think the folks there knew exactly who he was or who he was tied to. And it never got into Faust's book. But he did pay it. And I found out, actually, from a very distant cousin that he had paid it, and they said somewhere the archives should be in Bern. And I knew when he arrived in Philly, and I knew, roughly how old he was and when he should have come. And I got in touch with the lovely archivist over there, and she couldn't have been nicer. And she went digging through the records, and she emailed me the image. And I was just over the moon that he did have, indeed, an Abzug record.
So I wonder if my family did pay it. If I go back to Switzerland, would they give me that 10%? I'd have to ask.
I'd rather take citizenship.
Or a free meal. I'd take a free meal too.
At this point, I'd be too.
Yeah, you included this image too. You want to talk a little about this?
This is a record of the Koch family from Obersteinmo in the canton of Zurich. And this is the image that a lovely elderly woman in upstate New York sent to me, that she was a descendant of the Koch family. And did any of this make sense? And I said, well, it's proof that they're Swiss. So of course you can join on this with this. But let me see if I can find these actual records. And then I got to better understand. I did not fully understand the Faust book, the methodology behind his research. I knew, I said, okay, he's got this list. He's got these baptism and marriage dates. That's great. I can find that. I said, whoa. He based this book on these Abzug lists. I said, there should be a list. Ideally, if it survived, again, for barring flood and fire. So let me write a nice note to Zurich. I found this, I sent them that, and they sent me the record. But this is the Bible, the Albert Bernhard Faust. He wrote, it was a 2-volume book. One volume was entirely about Zurich, and others about Basel and Bern. And he used the Abzug list to generate this book, and it's something like 40,000 people are in this book. Mostly, interestingly, in family groups. The Swiss migrated as families. It's one of their defining features. It was rare to have the young buck, as it were, make his way to America. They came as families. That's a defining feature of Swiss migratory patterns in colonial America.
my Swiss ancestors did that as well, and it was dad, and their kids were relatively older already, and they
20s,
all traveled together. Yeah, it wasn't like
teenagers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't, pick Junior up in your arms and off you go.
Right, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I have 8 Swiss ancestral families or individuals. 5 or 6 came over as families, which means only 2 came over as, I call them the young bucks.
Here's another example of a baptism record that you sent. I think most people would look at this and say, how do you make anything of that? I can see Heinrich Jacob pretty clearly, but man, the rest of this stuff, holy moly.
Thank you. Lots of trial and error, lots of practice. I'll be the first to admit it. This is where the fun or the trouble begins, depending on your perspective. I was able to pin down Nicholas Maufley is my 7th great-grandfather. And his great-granddaughter was a woman named Katharina Maufley. And she married a fellow named Joseph Smith, my 4th great-grandparents. And I was researching her origins. And we had always thought the Maufley family was English. Miss Maufley, it had a certain Anglo ring to it. And I kept finding German-sounding name. Where's the Englishman in all this? And I found this guy, Klaus, or Nicholas Maufley, with an I at the end of his name, way up the top of the tree, that he'd come over, I think, 1737, 1738, from Bern. I said, whoa, who is this? What's going on here? And that was my first inkling that I had Swiss ancestry, A, and B, there's a lot going on here that I have no clue about. And I only knew it because she married directly into the Smith line. Otherwise, I probably would not have pursued the topic as closely. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But I've always made a point of studying the women who marry into the direct Smith line very closely, and who are they and where are they from. And this is where the chaos begins, as it were. And I found this record 2017, 2018, and I was like, this is really cool. And I've discovered also something, those of us who are researching Pennsylvania, if you come across a random oddball name ending in L-I, L-Y, L-E-Y, it's probably Swiss. That's
Absolutely.
A telltale
Absolutely.
sign. It's the closest thing there is to like a Swiss Mick or O that you could say it's Scottish or Irish. It's the closest thing.
Right. And
it's linguistically, like a never fail.
For those of you that speak Pennsylvania Dutch, or maybe you heard Pennsylvania Dutch growing up, it's the same thing. The Swiss influence, because Swiss German is different from standard German, the German that's spoken in Germany, Schweizerdeutsch, right? But in Pennsylvania Dutch, the influence is still there as well. And I'll give you just a real quick linguistic example. The Swiss influence is that they will put, when we do the diminutive form, so when we want to say something is smaller, so not just a cup, but like a smaller cup, the Swiss influence is always to put an li on the end of the word. So an example I always like to use is the word for a cup, like a cup you drink out of. For those that were Germanic, or the people coming from the Palatinate directly, those Germans, it was a Kopsche, CHE ending, which was typical in Germany. But the Swiss influence, they would say, and you hear this among the Amish and the Mennonite, they would say Kupli, L-Y, L-I on the end. So that is always, like you said, it's a giveaway almost that this is Swiss in some form or another, or Swiss influence.
And I got dumb lucky in figuring that out, that I had this, L-I-L-Y ending that married into the direct Smith line. I was like, I hit gold, as it were. And I was like, oh, wow, this is something, as I said, something interesting, something different is going on here.
Here's another part from the Mafli family as well. And their Abzugs, you were able to find that as well. Look at that beautiful handwriting. My goodness.
I got lucky because I had no clue this record existed. There was a very distant cousin who posted something on this very old genealogical page that Nicholas had emigrated with a distant cousin of his, and I recognized the maiden name, Yaahr, and it was his grandmother's maiden name. So I said, it's somewhere on his mother's side. Like maybe came over with like his second cousin or something, or it wasn't his first cousin, like his second cousin. And they said that he had paid the immigration tax, the Abzug, and he had been living in Zweisiemen. And I found the confirmation record in Zweisiemen. I said, oh, he's really there. He wasn't up in Amsolvingen, which is about 15 miles away. And as I said, I wrote to the archives in Bern. A lovely woman wrote back to me. I said, he came over 1737. He probably left shortly before. He was born here. He was living there. It should be in this exact book. They had the archival catalog posted online, and by God, there it was. She went through the whole thing and found it.
Your story reminds people, for a lot of us, for Americans that maybe want to get into their genealogy, or they know a little bit and they want to know more, to not be afraid to reach out to the old country, whether it's Switzerland or Germany. A lot of times I've heard stories of people that would say, and these people are a lot of times happy to help. So don't hesitate.
I was
if you
humbled actually that they, this guy in New York, it was almost like the distant cousin writes home, the cousin from a letter from America, as it were. And
300 years later.
I was dazzled. I was giddy when it came. I won't deny it. And they found another record about some other ancestor that hadn't been digitized yet. It was another line that had gone to Alsace. That they said, so we know that. And they said, you related to this other family? They said, they went to Alsace. Well, we found a record. He had actually gone there as a mercenary. Therefore, he wouldn't have paid the Abzug. But we have the muster roll from that area.
My goodness,
which led me down a whole other rabbit hole that he had gone to serve in Louis XIV's army about 1660. And they had lived in Alsace for 3 generations. And I said, that's them. And they were just thrilled that I had done my homework. They'll work with you if you've done your homework. Don't ask them to go build you a family tree. But if you've done your work, they'll play ball.
Is this the book that? This is okay. So if anyone is interested in seeing if their Swiss family falls in this category that Joseph talked about tonight, is this book digitized online somewhere?
Yes, it is. Happy Trust. If you go to our society's website, under
I'll be sharing that here in a minute. Yep.
Under secondary resources, we have links to both volumes. And volume 1 is Zurich, and volume 2 is Bern and Basel.
Okay. And one of our friends watching tonight, Erica, had said that, that she lives in Montgomery County and that there was this Swiss influence there. Of course, if we're looking Berks County, where I grew up, the Ole Valley was full of Swiss
Oh
immigrants as
yes.
well. When the Swiss got here to Pennsylvania, can we generally say or generalize and say most of them settled the frontier? Because we're talking early 1700s. They moved up north out of Philadelphia, came into Philadelphia, and then moved northwest and settled that land.
It bears mentioning that the folks that went up to Oley County, in particular, the Oley Valley area, they were Swiss who came by way of Alsace. I don't want to be pedantic. They were Swiss who came by way of Alsace. I believe there's Alsace Township up there.
There is Alsace Township in Berks County.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And a lot of the Swiss came by way of Alsace. There were, they basically went out to the frontier. They were looking for land because that was the one thing they could not get in Switzerland, because the land was very rocky, the country was overpopulated, and the Swiss had an oddball system of inheritance that I don't think a lot of people understand. The youngest son got the farm.
Oh.
Yes, the youngest son.
Was that a tradition in the old country as well?
Yes, that was at least in Bern and Zurich, which is where the bulk of the Pennsylvania Swiss came from. So that the older fellow was like, hey, listen, you know how the world is. I taught you what I could. Good luck, God bless. Figure it out.
Yeah.
But baby got the farm. Yeah. And so you suddenly, and that's why a lot went into foreign services. Mercenaries, I have at least two fellows who left Switzerland as mercenaries, and they went on to produce families that ultimately went to America. One came by way of the Rhineland, one came by way of Alsace. And it was basically, you're on your own. And that's why you had a lot of the older son got pushed off the farm.
Huh. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and that's why they just kept pushing further and further out to get land. I mean, there were Swiss up in the Lehigh Valley. They were up in Oley by 1730. But no, it was out there. The Swiss were out there. The Indians were out there. And that's about it.
Yes. That's right. Bill, our good friend Bill, who joins us every month, and he raises a really good point. Joseph talked about how his name was, or how some of these names were anglicized when they got here over the generations. I think more than one Swiss family name was anglicized. His Bailey ancestors, whom I long thought were English, because you think about it, you see the spelling and you're like, oh, it's spelling, it's English spelling, who were the Bailey family in Switzerland. The pronunciation stayed the same. Yeah. I mean, this happens to a lot of families, right? That's not something that was unique to your experience.
No,
and I think
a
lot of Pennsylvania Dutch maybe don't realize that, or they Bailey's a great example, and that's a common last name where I grew up among the Pennsylvania Dutch. So that's something else to think about if you're ever if for those of you out there watching and are thinking it's time you want to get into genealogy or any of this family research stuff. There's a lot of things you might uncover that are just going to be totally blow your mind that you never knew, because you only know what you know, right?
Yeah, I kept looking for the Rose of Kent, as it were, and it was she was a fair maiden from the Lehigh Valley, originally from Switzerland. And I was like, lovely woman, I'm sure, but not where I thought she was from.
So you referenced a couple times your organization. So I did include this, and we'll talk a little bit about you guys. So Joseph is, and I don't know, are you an officer in this group? I'm sorry, I don't want to mistitle you.
I'm the governor and one of the founders.
So a governor and founder of the Descendants of Swiss Settlers. And this is the website, dss1798.org. So that's the website if you want to learn more. But tell us a little bit about your organization and what you guys do.
As I said, where the fun and the trouble both starts, it goes back to Nicholas Maffley. It was 2019, and I had just joined the Dutch Settler Society and the Swedish Colonial Society. And I thought, was there a Swiss society? People have been over here a long time, and kept poking around, looking around. And I reached out to the Swiss American Historical Society, and I reached out to the Swiss Center North America. And there was a lot of polite nodding, as it were. Like, no, I don't think so. And I discovered that there's two very distinct groups in Swiss America. There's the Swiss who came after the present Confederation was formed, 1848, 1850. And then there's us old-timers who were here during the colonial or during the Revolution. And the newcomers, to their eternal credit, have done yeoman's work to preserve their Swiss heritage. language lessons, the occasional church group, a genealogy society. They're really on the ball, and that cuts across language lines and denominational lines. But when you go back a ways, you go, they just sort of blended away. They like melted away into the countryside. And I thought, these are very interesting people. So I started looking around. I realized there wasn't anything going on for the Swiss who had arrived during the colonial era. And I thought, I belong to a number of lineage societies. I could start this. And then I realized what went into it. I said, maybe not. But the pandemic came around and there was nothing to do. And I started doing a lot of research. It was the crash course I needed, as I always like to say, about Swiss history and politics and geography, religion, genealogy. It was basically this self-guided course over the course of a year and a half, 2 years. And I said, damn it, do it. Because I remember I read a terrific quote from the late Dr. Leo Schelbert. He was actively involved in the Swiss American Historical Society. And he said something to the effect, if I can give you the exact quote for a second, he said it all. Swiss immigrants are often difficult to recognize as Swiss, however, because as speakers of German, they are taken as German, and the French-speaking as Huguenots from France. Swiss surnames, furthermore, are often indistinguishable from German or French ones, and they are often anglicized as well. And I thought, if someone of his caliber and esteem in the Swiss American community is saying that, I said, you know how to do genealogy, young man, do it. Try to get the ball rolling on this organization. And I cast around among friends in different organizations, Sons of the American Revolution, the St. Nicholas Society, Society of Colonial Wars, and I got a core group together in pretty short order. They were the inaugural board, and we had our first meeting in 22. We also met in 23 via Zoom, and then we met in person in 24 in Philadelphia, which was so appropriate as the great bulk of the society's membership arrived at the port of Philadelphia in the 1730s and 1740s. And that was deeply meaningful that we were able to gather together there in Philadelphia on a very rainy Saturday, as Richard Mamon, our new secretary, and my cousin will corroborate.
So if anybody wants to learn more about that group, of course, the website was dss1798.org. Many of you watching the show have Swiss immigration, Swiss ancestors. I know you do because you're Pennsylvania Dutch, and there was a lot of us, and they had a lot of kids when they were here, and the names kept spreading.
They were a prolific line, to say the least.
They were a prolific line. It's right. That's
if
true.
I could just
so you can check out. Yeah, go ahead.
1798. I was going to. You have to set up a date of eligibility of when did people arrive here, and of course, the first reaction was 1776. 1776 is a meaningless year in Swiss history, and as I discovered as I was doing more research about Swiss history, it was the 5th of March, 1798, that Napoleon's army marched into the city of Bern, which was the de facto capital of the old Swiss Confederacy, and it collapsed literally overnight. Because the old Swiss Confederacy was basically totally rotten. It was like an appendage of the Holy Roman Empire, essentially. And I said, well, that's a date. That's when things started to change. Because a few weeks later in Aarau, in the canton of Aargau, Peter Ax, who was one of Napoleon's functionaries, or flunkies, should you prefer, he proclaimed a heavily Francophone, Napoleonic influenced Helvetic Republic, and this was like the change. The modern era came crashing down on Switzerland. Civil records started. They adopted the metric system. They started speaking French, and meanwhile, all the folks up in Bern was this very wealthy, very stiff and respectable canton. The power, the nexus of power shifted away from Bern and out to the countryside a bit, and also out to other cities such as Geneva, such as Basel, such as Zurich. And I said something really interesting something different happened on this date. And I said, that's the date for eligibility, 5th of March, 1798. And that's why 1798 is such a big deal for us.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Joseph, thanks so much for coming on this
Oh,
month and telling us about this.
I could go on and on.
I'm sure you could, as we all could when we get on a topic that we really, really love. But we never, I mean, it was time. I know I've been doing this show for 4 years now, and we never really highlighted the Swiss. And thanks to Richard, who we gave a shout out to earlier before, he was the one that poked me in this direction. Doug, you got to get this guy on. So I said, well, we'll reach out and see. And you graciously accepted to come on the show, and I appreciate it and share your knowledge. And like I said, many of us are Swiss or have Swiss background. Check out their organization. There's probably resources there on their website too, if you're interested in learning more. Hopefully we'll have you on again in the future sometime, Joseph. I'd like to thank you for coming on the show.
We love that. Thank you so much, Doug. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Well, there you go. My Swiss friends, which I'm sure there are many of you here. I was in Switzerland. So real quick, the stuff that I can share my story. My grandmother's family, who were original settlers to the Oli Valley, the Hoch family, they came from Basel, just outside of Basel, Switzerland, is right there on the Rhine. 2 years ago when I was over, I got to go back to Basel, and and this is stuff you can do if you can do your genealogy right. And if you're lucky, I was able to go to the church where I don't remember the number, my 15th or 14th great grandfather was baptized in the 1500s there in Basel, Switzerland. And the baptismal font looked old enough. It might have even been the same font. Who knows? I say it was anyway. I took a picture next to it. But Switzerland is a wonderful country. Many of us have have heritage that lies there. As we mentioned, don't let the language barrier stop you from going. The food is delicious. The scenery is gorgeous. Switzerland is safe. It's clean. Please, if you find yourself in Europe, even if you don't have Swiss heritage, book a flight, get on the train, and go to Switzerland. You will thank me for it once you get home. Trust me. Well, what a great episode there with Joseph. Really appreciate that information. Learn a little bit more about the Swiss. And as we know, I mean, they were prolific in the Oli Valley, in parts of Montgomery County, in parts of Bucks County, and up into the Lehigh Valley as well. I mean, the Swiss really were there. And then, of course, we think about all the Amish and the Mennonite that came and then spread out. I mean, we have people throwing comments here. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, Titus says, my ancestor Hans Jakob Keller emigrated from Rotenfluh, Canton Basel, in 1736 to Ephrata, where they were householders at the cloister there, but were the German Baptist Brethren groups. I mean, it's a similar story for a lot of people. My Stutzman, Yoder, and Miller ancestors all came from Bern, Switzerland. I mean, really, there's a lot of us Pennsylvania Dutch have a Swiss line in our family tree. Many of us probably have multiple Swiss lines. So if you never really thought about that, and you always think, well, all my ancestors were German, that might not necessarily be the case. Just because they shared the language, they could be Swiss. So if you're into genealogy, if you're lucky enough to have someone had done the records and done all the work, check that out and see if you too, like me, have some Swiss ties and Swiss ancestral stories. Well, we every month we like to bring a poem, and this year it's January, so I thought I gotta find a poem that deals with the new year. So I'm gonna pull myself out here and read this, but this is from Frank Oberholtzer, and this is his poem Es Nei Yaahr, the New Year. Pennsylvania Dutch is on the left, English is on the right. You can read whichever side you feel comfortable with. I'm going to read the Pennsylvania Dutch so you can hear what that would sound like. So Es Nei Yaahr von Frank Oberholtzer. In dem Jahr, was ist vorbei, war des Hats etmals wie Blei. Wie viel Träne, ach so heiß, in der Auer, Gott just weiß. Dadurch des, als sind wir noch do, gehen ins neue Jahr und so. Lass uns Fasser frischer Mut und just halten, was war gut. Ich wünsch euch im neuen Jahr mehr Glück als wie davor. Langes Leben und Gesundheit und all viele Herrlichkeit. Möcht ihr frei von Sorge sei, lustig und doch ernst dabei. Unenseliges Schicksal, das soll kommen zu euch all. But that's a great one, isn't it? I really like that. I really like there's a lot in there that I really, really like, and hopefully you liked it too. So our poem Es Nei Yaahr von Frank Oberholtzer. Also, every month I like to bring you a piece of music. Now, those of you that follow me on social media, you probably saw this because I posted this video on New Year's Eve. Our good friend and my dear friend Chris and I, this over Christmas break, we Let me hear. I got to do a little bit of computer stuff here. We were having a session where we were working on some music, as we often do. And we have performed Old Lang Syne many times in Pennsylvania Dutch at events that we've played at, but we'd never done a version to post on the internet. And I thought, well, we got to fix that. Chris was here. So we picked up the instruments and we recorded this version of Old Lang Syne, but it's in Pennsylvania Dutch. So sit back and enjoy. I know it's not New Year's anymore, but heck, it's not that far removed. Today's only the 22nd. So let me do this and this and enjoy.
Soll Bekanntschaft nimmer mehr bei uns erinnert sein. Soll alte Freundschaft nimmer mehr bei uns vergessen sein. Ach nee, mein lieber Schatz, verrat Lang Sei. Na, never mir ein guter Schatz, verrat Lang Sei. Du ist mein Hand, mein lieber Schatz, gib mir dein Hand, mein Freund. Wir trinken jetzt als noch ein Schnaps, du fröhlich Lang Sei. Adieu, adieu, leb wohl, mein Schatz, fröhlich Lang Sei. Kennt Zeit, wer unser letzter Schnaps, fröhlich Lang Sei. Ach nee, mein lieber Schatz, verrat Lang Sei. Trau nimmer mir ein guter Schnaps, verrat Lang Sei. Ach nee, mein lieber Schatz, verrat Lang Sei. Na, nimmer mir ein guter Schnaps, verrat Lang Sei. Holliges Nei Yaahr, dear friends.
Holliges Nei Yaahr.
We'll see you in 2025.
Yes, you will. Let me just stop sharing this. And where did I go? Put me back in, my dear friends. My wife would probably love to be able to do that. Just make me disappear every once in a while. And mute me, but she doesn't have that power. Hey, that was our version of Lang Sei. Hopefully you enjoyed that. It's one of my favorite songs. I've always loved that song, and to sing it in Pennsylvania Dutch means a lot too. I mean, the translation's almost the same. There's a couple words that are a little different that we changed, but for the most part, it's the same as most people know, the traditional Old Lang Syne. Well, we've made it to the end of another month, my dear friends. A couple things real quick before you leave, and that would be, hey, do you want to get your own Pennsylvania Dutch merch? Check out our website, zazzle.com/PA-Dutch101, where you can get Pennsylvania Dutch themed merchandise, t-shirts, sweatshirts, magnets, stickers. We got tons of great stuff out there. Things like our models. We have the Out in the Light t-shirt. We have a Schnickel Fritz t-shirt. We also have tons of things like you see here. I recently saw a car that had our I Break for Hex sign sticker on the back, and I was like, woohoo! But you can get that also in a magnet for on your kitchen refrigerator, same as Ich bin Deutsch. There's tons of stuff on there. Check it out. We got an Elbedritch shirt on there, but you can get these things in more than just shirts. So please feel free to visit the website, zazzle.com/PA-Dutch101. They make great gifts if you got a birthday coming up or a Valentine's Day gift that's coming up, or for anybody celebrating Fastnachts, while you're eating your Fastnacht, you can be eating your Fastnacht in a brand new I noch einmal t-shirt or a Donnerwetter t-shirt. What more could one ask for? Seriously, people. So check that out, dear friends. And if you also like what we're doing and you'd like to financially support the channel, you have two ways of doing that. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Doug Maidenford, or you can become a monthly Patreon on a monthly patron on our Patreon page. Just go to patreon.com/PA-Dutch101. And I'd like to give a shout out to some people that have recently supported us financially. Gary and Deanna Weaver, Nathan Seeger, Seth Moak, Norman Young, Randy S., Ron Griffiths, Nicole Johns, David Hunsinger, Dolly Moyer, Gary Johansson, Gail Spilsbury, Bill Nace, Susan Thomas, Tanya, Big Z2, Leoso, Lenora Holt, Cayenne, Januchowski, and Thomas Finnegan. Thank you so much for your support. All of that money that we get through those campaigns goes to the upkeep of the channel, help pay for things to put gas in my Subaru so I can go to Pennsylvania Dutch events and film things for the YouTube channel. Any donation that you guys make is I'm humbled by, but also truly thankful for your support. Mark your calendars. We'll be right back here next month, February 19th, when we'll be welcoming back our good friend. She gets the award for being my most for the guest that's been on the most, and that is our good friend Candace Perry, who works at the Schwenkfelder Museum there in Heritage Center. She is so excited to give this talk next month, Fashion PA Dutch style. I can't wait. She hasn't shown me any of the images that she wants to share yet because she wants to surprise me closer to the time, but it's going to be an awesome show. Wednesday, February the 19th, 2025 at 6 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel and also over on the Facebook page, PA Dutch 101. It's going to be an awesome show. Can't wait. Hopefully you'll be able to join us again. But if you miss a live show, that's no big deal because the shows all get archived on my YouTube channel. If this is your first time joining us, there is 4 years worth of shows on my YouTube channel. If you go over there and you click on the live tab, all of the PA Dutch live episodes that we've ever done since January of 2021 are there and archived. So there's tons of great episodes there. And that's on top of all of the other videos that are in there. Literally, and I'm not kidding, literally over 1,000 videos on the YouTube channel, ranging from language stuff for PA Dutch, history, cooking videos, music videos, you name it. It's there. Please check it out. And you can also check out my website, padutch101.com. That gives you links to other things that will help you in exploring our culture, our language, our history. And if you're on social media, give us a follow on Facebook, on Instagram, on X. Just look for PA Dutch 101. We're on all those places. And then, of course, the YouTube. Tell your friends about the great things we're doing here. Share your Pennsylvania Dutch pride. Go look up your Swiss background if you have some. Learn a little bit more about Switzerland. Come back next month even more, informed than you were before. And then next month, we'll fill you with some more information about fashion PA Dutch style. I can't wait for that. It's going to be a great, great episode. So till next month, dear friends, I can't wait to be with you again. And I'm always so humbled and so thankful that you take time out of your busy schedules and busy lives to spend an hour with me here on the show. It truly means a lot. And I'm going to be really busy in the next couple months. We got a lot of Groundhog Lodge events that I'll be speaking at. We got the Berks County for Sumling, and I'll give you information about all that stuff in our February episode because a lot of the stuff really kicks off in February, March, and April. But there's a busy spring with a lot of opportunities for you to get out there and experience Pennsylvania Dutch cultural stuff face-to-face, in person, with great food. I'll have more information about all those events coming up in our next month's episode. But till next month, dear friends, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch. Be proud of being Pennsylvania Dutch. Tell our story to people, and mach's gut.
Mach's gut zu dir, mach's gut zu dir, mach's gut zu dir für now. Unsere Zeit ist all und so es ist, mach's gut für now. Hoff wieder mit dir zu sein, hoff du bringst zurück ein Freund. Mach's gut zu dir, mach's gut zu dir, mach's gut zu dir für now. Unsere Zeit ist all und so es ist, mach's gut für now. Hoff wieder mit dir zu sein, hoff du bringst zurück ein Freund. Und so mach's gut, lieber Freund, mach's gut.